Have you ever been betrayed, not by a stranger, not by some crook in the street, but by your very own blood? Because that's what happened to me. Name's Hank Lawson. I'm 70 years old, a widower, and I've lived all my life out here in Texas ranch country. Folks around here see me as an old cowboy, boots worn down, hat frayed at the edges, skin like leather from years under the sun. But I'll tell you something right now, old don't mean weak, and broke don't mean beat. You're about to hear a story about greed, betrayal, and payback. And it all started the night my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said words that cut deeper than a knife. You're not worth a dime, Hank. Let me back it up for you. I wasn't always just a lonely old rancher. Once upon a time, I had Mary, my wife. 35 years we spent together building a life out here. We raised cattle, ran a modest trucking outfit, and when times were good, I even dabbled in oil leases. Not big scale, just enough to keep the lights on and a little extra tucked away. When Mary passed 5 years ago, cancer took more than her smile. It took the color out of my world. After that, it was just me and the land. My boy, Mark, he was my only family left, and like any father, I tried to help him however I could. Paid for his college, fronted him cash when he wanted to get into business, even gave him a slice of the ranch to manage. But Mark, well, let's just say he wasn't cut from the same cloth. He liked the look of hard work, but never the sweat of it. Where I saw land, legacy, and livestock, he saw dollar signs. And when he married Brittany, things only got worse. If you're rooting for Jack and his fight for justice, smash that like button and hit subscribe to Darkside Revenge. If you can't stand Lisa's greed and betrayal, share this story and let everyone see karma hit hard. Brittany was what we call Dallas fancy. Perfect nails, perfect hair, always on the phone, always talking about money. She grew up with nothing, so I can't fault her for wanting comfort. But the way she looked at me, like I was in her way. Like I was a roadblock between her and whatever dream mansion she had pinned on her Pinterest board. At first, I ignored it. She's young, I thought, she'll settle down. But over the years, her whispers turned into schemes. She wanted the ranch sold, wanted me to move into some retirement home, wanted Mark to inherit now, not later, not when I was gone. And Mark, God help him, went right along with it. It all boiled over one Friday night. Brittany had invited me to their house, said she cooked a meal. Truth be told, I knew something was up the moment I sat down. She doesn't cook. I walked in, boots dusty, hat in hand, and there they were at the table. Brittany with that fake smile plastered on, Mark shifting in his seat like a boy about to confess he broke a window. Dinner was awkward, quiet except for the clink of forks. Halfway through, Brittany cleared her throat. Hank, she said, sweet as poisoned honey, Mark and I have been thinking, it's time you stop working yourself to the bone out there on that ranch. You're not young anymore. You need to relax, enjoy life. Why not sell the place? You could move into a nice assisted living facility in Dallas. We take care of everything. I set my fork down, my gut tightened. This ranch has been in our family for 3 generations. It's not just dirt, it's home. Brittany's smile dropped like a mask falling off. Home, Hank, it's just land, dry dirt and broken fences. You're sitting on money and too stubborn to cash it in. Honestly, you're not worth a dime keeping it. The room went dead silent. My own son didn't say a word. He just stared at his plate while his wife gutted me alive with her words. I looked at Mark, searching for something, loyalty, anger, anything, but he just muttered, "She's right, Dad, you're holding on to the past. It's time to let it go." That moment, it broke something inside me, not sadness, not grief, rage, pure, unshakable rage. I'd given my boy everything, years of sacrifice, blood, sweat, and money, and here he was, letting his wife tell me I wasn't worth a dime. I stood up slow, placed my napkin on the table, and looked Brittany dead in the eye. You may think I'm worthless, but you don't know a damn thing about me, and you sure as hell don't know what I've built. Then I turned to Mark. Son, I buried your mother with my own 2 hands. I kept this family together when I wanted to fall apart. Don't you ever forget who made you who you are. And with that, I walked out. That night, I sat on my porch under the Texas stars, my shotgun leaning by the door, the air thick with betrayal. Mary's picture sat on the table beside me. For the first time in years, I didn't cry when I looked at it. Instead, I whispered, "They think I'm done. They think I'm broke, but they're about to learn who Hank Lawson really is." See, Brittany and Mark thought I was just some washed-up rancher with a rundown house and a few cows. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Mary and I had played a longer game. Back in the 90s, I'd invested quiet money in oil leases, small stakes here and there, nothing flashy. Over time, those stakes grew. Then I used the profits to buy into trucking, hauling crude across county lines. Ranching was my heart, but oil and freight, that was my pocketbook. And over 30 years, those investments snowballed into something big, something worth more than Brittany's wildest dreams. By the time she spat those words at me, I wasn't just a rancher. I was sitting on an empire worth $10 million, and nobody had a clue. Not even Mark. That night, I made a choice. If they wanted to fight over land, money, and legacy, then by God, I'd give them one. But it wouldn't be a fair fight. I'd been underestimated my whole life. Folks saw a tired cowboy. What they didn't see was the man who outsmarted oil companies, built a trucking network, and held his land through droughts, floods, and debt. This wasn't going to be about anger anymore. This was going to be about revenge. Because when family turns against you, when your own blood calls you worthless, the only thing left to do is show them just how valuable you really are. So I sat there in the dark, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, and smiled for the first time in years. "Game on," I whispered to the night. And that was just the beginning. My greedy daughter-in-law thought she could steal my home. My son thought I'd roll over. But neither of them knew the empire I'd been building in the shadows. Stay tuned for Ahead of Darkside Revenge, because next I started digging into their own secrets. And what I found, it'll shock you. You know, betrayal doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in quiet like a snake in the grass waiting for the right moment to strike. After Brittany spat those words in my face, "You're not worth a dime," I figured maybe it was just her temper talking. But as the days passed, I noticed more and more cracks in the family I thought I'd built with my bare two hands. It was a Sunday evening and the smell of smoked brisket filled my kitchen. I'd kept that tradition alive ever since Mary passed. Sunday dinners were sacred. Family time. Even when my son Mark was a boy, he'd race back home just for it. But this time, when I set the table, Brittany came strutting in like she owned the place. High heels clicking on my hardwood floors, that smug smile plastered across her face. Mark followed close behind, shoulders hunched like a boy caught sneaking into a saloon. We sat down, and before I could pass the cornbread, Brittany leaned forward with her nails tapping the table. "Hank," she said, sweet as poison, "Mark and I have been talking. It's time you moved into something smaller. A retirement community maybe. This ranch, it's just too much for you." I froze mid-bite, my fork clinked against the plate. Retirement community, that was her polite way of saying, get out of your own damn home. "Darlin'," I said, my voice steady though my blood boiled, "this ranch has been lossin' land since my granddaddy broke wild horses out here. I ain't movin'." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, she's just looking out for you. You're 70 now, maybe it's time to think practical." That's when Brittany's mask slipped. She dropped the sweetness and bared her fangs. "Be honest, Hank, you're sittin' on prime land, oil under your boots, grazing land developers would kill for, and you're just, wastin' it." I stared at her, my jaw tight. The audacity of this woman dismissing decades of sweat, cattle, and tradition like it was nothing. A week later, I found a man standin' at my gate, city shoes dusty from my dirt road, slick haircut, leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Mr. Carter, family attorney. Family attorney, I hadn't hired him. Turns out Mark and Brittany had. He laid papers on my porch table, talking fast about power of attorney and asset management. Said it was all for my benefit, to simplify things. All I had to do was sign and Mark would take care of everything. I didn't sign. Instead, I poured him a cup of black coffee, sat across from him, and let silence do the talking. Silence makes liars nervous. Sure enough, within 5 minutes he was sweating. He packed up quick and said he'd come back another time. That night, sittin' by the fire, I realized the depth of their greed. This wasn't about looking out for me. It was about talking me out of the way. Word travels fast in a small Texas town. Folks at Murphy's bar started whisperin', saying they'd heard Mark braggin' about big changes common once the old man steps aside. A ranch hand I'd known 20 years told me Brittany was already talkin' with real estate agents, behind my back, planning to sell Lawson Ranch. I kept my cool. On the outside, I was the same old Hank, drinkin' coffee, feedin' the cattle, fixin' fences, but inside, I was a storm brewin'. One evening, as I was comin' back from the pasture, I saw headlights parked down the road. A black SUV, tinted windows. Out here, you notice what doesn't belong. It followed me half a mile before turnin' off. A warning, plain as day. Brittany and Mark weren't just playin' family politics anymore, they had money and muscle behind them. That night, sittin' on my porch under a sky full of Texas stars, I whispered into the night. Mary, they think I'm old, they think I'm weak, but they've got no damn idea who they're. I didn't sleep much those days. My mind ran back to every sacrifice I'd ever made, every late-night trucking haul, every busted knuckle workin' rigs, every acre of this ranch I fought to keep alive. And now my own blood, my son, was let and greed blind him, but I wasn't gonna cry about it. No, I was gonna fight. See, what Brittany didn't know was this: Lawson Ranch was just the surface. What lay beneath, the oil leases, the trucking contracts, the investments Mary and I made decades ago, that was the real empire. An empire I'd built brick by brick. They thought they were about to cash in, but I was about to teach them the hardest lesson of their lives. The storm wasn't just common anymore. It was already here. And I was the one bringing the thunder. They say every ranch has a heartbeat, the creak of the barn doors, the sound of cattle lowin', the crunch of boots on dirt. For me, Lawson Ranch wasn't just land. It was my bloodline, my history, my reason for drawin' breath each morning. But greed don't care about heartbeats. Greed just wants silence, so it can strip everything bare. It was a Tuesday morning when I found it. A crisp envelope sittin' inside my old red mailbox at the end of the drive. No stamp, no postmark, hand-delivered. Inside was a real estate flyer, glossy and loud, with a picture of my ranch. Prime Texas ranchland for sale, serious buyers only. I damn near dropped it. They weren't even subtle anymore. Brittany had taken the first step. She'd put Lawson Ranch up for sale without so much as looking me in the eye. I drove into town, anger-ridden, shotgun with me the whole way. At Caldwell Realty, I found him, a slick-haired kid barely old enough to shave, sittin' behind a shiny desk. "You the one trying to sell my land?" I asked, my voice low and steady. He looked up, startled, then forced a smile. Yes, sir. Mrs. Lawson said everything was in order. Beautiful property. We already have interest." "Mrs. Lawson?" I leaned in, knuckles pressed against his polished desk. "Son, there's only one Lawson who owns that land, and you're looking at him." His face went pale. I was told your son has power of attorney." I cut him off. "My son don't speak for me. Not now, not ever. You pull that listing before sundown, or I'll make sure you never sell another damn acre in this county." The boy nodded so fast, I thought his head might fall off. But as I walked out, I knew one thing: Brittany wasn't gonna stop. That night, I waited for them. Mark's truck headlights came rollin' down the drive just as the sun dipped behind the horizon. Brittany hopped out first, heels clickin' against my gravel like gunshots. "Why you pull the listing?" she snapped before even saying hello. I stepped off the porch, my shadow long across the yard. "Because you don't sell a man's legacy out from under him." She crossed her arms, smirkin' like the devil herself. "Hank, you're Bane's selfish. Do you know what kind of money this land could bring? Millions. You could live out your golden years in comfort instead of working yourself into the grave." I looked past her, straight at my boy. "And what about you, Mark? You gonna stand there and let your wife spit on everything our family's built?" He wouldn't meet my eyes, just kicked the dirt with his boot. "Dad, maybe she's right, maybe it's time." My chest tightened. The boy I raised, the one I carried on my shoulders to watch rodeos, was standin' there choosin' dollar signs over blood. I didn't yell, didn't curse, I just said, "You'll regret this, son. Both of you will." then I turned and walked inside, leaving them standing in the dust. That night, sittin' alone in my den, I opened the old cedar chest Mary and I had kept locked for years. Inside were the papers nobody knew about, oil leases signed back in the 80s, trucking contracts that still pulled in money every month, land deeds scattered across 3 counties. Brittany thought she was stylin' a ranch. She had no idea about the empire buried underneath it. I ran my hand across those documents, feelin' Mary's presence in every sheet of paper. She believed in me when I was haulin' freight overnight and drillin' rigs at dawn. She believed in the empire we built together. And I swore right there in that quiet den that I'd protect it with everything I had left. 2 nights later, I heard tires crunching down my drive at midnight. A black SUV again, just like before. This time it didn't stop at the gate. It rolled right up to my barn. 3 men stepped out, suits in the country, out of place as a rattlesnake in church. One of 'em leaned against the hood, lightin' a cigar. The smoke curled in the moonlight as he called out, "Mr. Lawson, folks say you're Bane stubborn. We'd hate to see something happen to that pretty old barn of yours." I stood on the porch, shotgun resting across my arms. My voice carried across the dark. "Step 1 foot closer and you'll find out just how stubborn I can be." They laughed, climbed back into their SUV and peeled off. But their message was clear. This wasn't just family greed anymore. Bigger sharks were circling. They thought they had me cornered, an old man sittin' on dusty land, too tired to fight, too sentimental to see straight. But here's the thing about men like me, we don't show all our cards up front. Brittany saw a ranch, the oil boys saw acreage, Mark saw dollar signs. What none of them saw was the empire I'd been building for decades. The cedar chest in my den wasn't just a box of papers. It was a vault of power. Every late-night trucking run, every rig I invested in, every handshake deal I made down at Murphy's bar, all of it lived in those documents. There were oil leases signed back when gas was cheaper than a cup of coffee. Small plots of land I'd bought for pennies, now worth millions thanks to pipelines running underneath. And my old trucking company, Lawson Freight, still had contracts with half the distributors in Texas. I'd let folks think I'd slowed down after Mary passed, but truth was, I never stopped building. Quietly, carefully. Mary used to say, "Hank, don't ever put all your eggs in one basket. Spread 'em out. Hide 'em where the foxes won't find 'em." God bless her, she was right. The next morning, I drove into town, papers locked tight in my old leather satchel. I walked into Marlowe Savings and Loan, where the banker, Carl Simmons, had known me since I was hauling cattle at 20 years old. Carl squinted when he saw me. "Hank Lawson, haven't seen you in a while. What brings you in?" I laid the satchel on his desk, opened it up, and spread those papers like a poker hand. Oil leases, land deeds, contracts. His eyes widened with every page. "Lord Almighty, Hank," he whispered, "I didn't know you were sittin' on all this." "That's the point," I said, leaning back in the chair. "And now I need to move some pieces around, quietly. I want everything airtight. No one, and I mean no one, touches Lawson property without my say-so." Carl nodded. "Consider it done. You want me to spook the folks pockin' around?" I gave him a hard look. "Not yet. Let 'em think I'm weak. Let 'em think they're winning. When the time comes, I'll pull the rug out from under 'em." That Friday, I called a gathering at Murphy's bar. The place smelled of sawdust and whiskey, the kind of joint where secrets travel faster than a wildfire. I stood by the jukebox, hat in hand, looking at the faces of men and women who'd all been burned by the same greedy hands. Ranchers forced off their land. Truckers cheated out of wages. Oil men fired when they wouldn't cut corners. "Folks," I began, my voice steady, "they think Lawson Ranch is just dirt, but they're common for all of us. Bit by bit, acre by acre, until we got nothing left. I don't plan on letting that happen. Not to me, not to you." There was a murmur through the crowd. A few heads nodded, a few fists clenched. "I ain't asking you to fight for me," I continued. "I'm asking you to fight for yourselves, because once they're done with me, they'll be knocking on your door next." That lit a fire. Old friends clapped me on the back. Younger men stepped forward, offering trucks, tools, whatever I needed. For the first time, I wasn't standing alone. Of course, word got back to Brittany. She stormed into the ranch 2 days later, heels digging ruts into my dirt like they own the place. "I heard about your little town hall," she sneered. "You think you can rally these hillbillies against progress? Hank, you're old, outdated. This land could make us rich and you're throwing it away for pride." I looked her dead in the eye, calm as a man staring down a rattlesnake. "This ain't pride, darlin', it's principle, and I'd rather die broke than sell my soul to the likes of you." Her smile was cold as steel. "Then I'll just have to take it, one way or another." That night, as I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, I smelled smoke, looked out across the pasture and saw an orange glow in the distance. My neighbor's hay barn was burning. Coincidence? Not a chance. It was a message, a warning. Next time it might be my barn or my house. I stood up, heart pounding, and whispered into the night. "You think you can scare me? You think fire and threats will break me? No, you just poured gasoline on the storm I'm about to bring." They thought I was just an old rancher sitting on dirt. What they didn't know was that I held the keys to an empire that could burn em all down, and Lord help me, I was ready to strike the match. Family gatherings are supposed to bring people together, but when greed runs deeper than blood, sometimes those gatherings are just ambushes dressed up with balloons and cake. Brittany mailed me the invitation herself, a pastel card with gold lettering, "Baby shower for Brittany Lawson, celebrating the future of the Lawson legacy." The Lawson legacy, those words burned hotter than Texas asphalt in July. It wasn't a baby shower, it was a stage for Brittany to play her little power game, surrounded by neighbors, friends, and half the town. I almost didn't go, but Mary raised me to face problems head-on, not hide from em. So I saddled up, shaved my jaw clean, and walked into that hall like I owned the place. The community center was draped in pink and blue streamers, tables stacked with cupcakes, balloons floating overhead. But the real show wasn't the decorations. It was Brittany holding court like a queen, belly round, smile sharper than a barbed wire fence. "Everyone," she called out the second she spotted me, "the man of the hour has arrived, my father-in-law Hank Lawson." Applause rippled through the crowd, but it wasn't for me. No, she'd set this up so everyone would watch what came next. Halfway through the party, Brittany clinked her glass and stood by the microphone. Mark hovered behind her, looking like a boy caught in a lie. "Thank y'all for comin'," Brittany began, voice sweet as honey. "This baby is the future of the Lawson family, and with Hank moving into retirement soon, we're proud to announce that Lawson Ranch will be passed on to us, where it belongs." The room gasped, whispers spread like wildfire. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. She wasn't just trying to steal my land anymore, she was stealing my name, my legacy, in front of everyone I knew. Then she doubled down. "We're already in talks with developers to make Lawson Ranch more profitable for the next generation. No more outdated cattle, no more wasted land. This baby will inherit an empire." That was it, the final straw. I stood up, slow and steady, hat in hand. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the ceiling fan. "Brittany," I said, voice carrying across the hall, "you've got a sharp tongue, I'll give you that, but you've also got it twisted." Every eye turned to me. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder of papers, oil leases, land deeds, contracts, proof of everything she didn't know about. "This ranch, it ain't for sale, and it sure as hell ain't Bane handed over like some baby shower gift. I built this empire with my wife Mary, with sweat, with sacrifice, and you ain't earned a damn inch of it." Gasps filled the room. Brittany's smile cracked, her face flushing red. Mark tried to step forward, but I cut him off with a glare sharp enough to split wood. "You may be carrying Lawson blood in that belly," I continued, "but don't you ever forget, Lawson legacy ain't bought, and it damn sure ain't stolen." The party ended in chaos. Half the guests left whispering. Some shook my hand, muttering words of support. Others kept their distance, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. Brittany stormed out, dragon mark behind her, but as she passed, she leaned in close enough for only me to hear. Her voice was venom. "You humiliated me today, old man. That was a mistake. You don't know who you're dealing with." I watched her heels click across the parking lot, my jaw tight. She thought she was the one playing games. She didn't realize I'd just laid my first card on the table. That evening, as I sat on my porch, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hank Lawson," a voice drawled. "We hear you've been stirring trouble. Best watch yourself. Accidents happen out on those lonely ranch roads." The line went dead. I set the phone down slow, staring out across my land under the moonlight. My land, my empire. They'd declared war in front of the whole damn town. And now it was my turn to fight back. The night was quiet out on the Thornton Ranch, but Jack's soul was anything but calm. He had come a long way since that dusty morning when his world fell apart, since Clayton Briggs stole his land, his legacy, and damn near his dignity. But now, after months of gathering allies, evidence, and grit, the hour of truth was finally here. The moonlight painted the prairie in silver and shadows as Jack checked his Colt. It wasn't just a weapon, it was the last line between justice and the abyss. Inside his chest, his heart thudded heavy, like the sound of boots on hardwood. "This is it," Jack muttered, staring at the old family portrait nailed above the mantel. His wife's gentle eyes and his boy's smile seemed to burn into him. "For you, for us." Clayton Briggs thought himself untouchable. Oil money had made him cocky, and bought men had made him lazy. But Jack knew something about men like him. They weren't half as smart once you stripped away their guards. And tonight that was the plan. Jack had lured him out with whispers of a deal, a phony land title that would bury the last legal threat against Briggs' empire. The bait was too good for Clayton's greed to ignore. At midnight sharp, a convoy of black SUVs rolled onto the edge of the Thornton Ranch. Their headlights cut across the dirt like prison searchlights. Clayton stepped out wearing his trademark white Stetson, a smirk plastered across his smug face. Flanked by armed men, he strolled like a man heading into a saloon he already owned. "Thornton," he called, his voice booming. "I knew you, crawl back. Ain't a man alive can stand toe-to-toe with me and win. You got something for me?" Jack stepped out of the barn shadows, tall and steady, the Colt gleaming at his side. "Yeah, Briggs, I got something you've been running from all your life." Clayton's grin widened. "And what's that?" "Truth." The air crackled. One of Briggs' men reached for his rifle, but before he could aim, a shotgun blast thundered from the hayloft. Sheriff Dalton's deputies, men who'd been quietly tipped off and waiting for this moment, rained down covering fire. Chaos broke loose. Gunfire split the night, sparks flying off steel and dirt. Men scattered, cursing, ducking, firing blind. Jack stayed locked on Clayton. He wasn't there for the lackeys. This was personal. Briggs drew, but Jack was faster. Years of ranch work, years of surviving loss, years of carrying weight a lesser man couldn't bear, all of it poured into that moment. The Colt roared and Briggs' hat flew off his head as the bullet tore through the brim. "Next one's between your eyes," Jack growled, steady as stone. Clayton stumbled, his bravado cracking. You wouldn't. You ain't a killer, Thornton. You ain't me." Jack's finger tightened on the trigger. The fire in his chest screamed to end it right there, to put Clayton Briggs in the dirt where rattlesnakes belonged. But another voice came, softer, steadier. His wife's voice, his boy's laughter. No, he was Briggs. He wasn't the kind of man who left a trail of ruin and blood. Holstering his Colt, Jack stepped forward, fist clenched. "You're right, I ain't you." Then his fist cracked across Clayton's jaw with the force of a lifetime of rage. The oil man crumpled in the dust, blood painting his smile into a broken sneer. Sheriff Dalton's men swarmed in, cuffs snapping tight around Briggs' wrists. "It's over, Jack," the sheriff said. "Law'll take it from here." Jack looked down at Clayton Briggs, beaten but alive. "No, Sheriff, it ain't over. Not until every acre he stole is given back to the folks he bled dry. That's justice." Dalton nodded. "Reckon the courts'll agree with you once they see this pile of evidence." He held up the files. Jack had gathered: deeds, ledgers, bribes, the whole rotten empire on paper. The first rays of morning broke across the Texas horizon as the convoy carried Briggs away in shackles. The prairie seemed to breathe again, free of the shadow that had haunted it. Jack stood at the fence line, watching the sun rise over his land. His land. The soil seemed richer, the air cleaner. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. But inside, Jack knew scars never truly fade. He won, sure, but at a cost that could never be repaid. The wind rustled the grass, carrying the faintest whisper of his wife's voice, his son's laughter. He smiled through the ache. "They'd be proud, Jack," Sheriff Dalton said softly beside him. Jack nodded, eyes still on the horizon. "Maybe, but I ain't done yet. This land deserves better. My people deserve better. Briggs was just the start. There's a whole lot of snakes out there." Dalton chuckled. "You ain't plannin' on ridden into every fight in Texas, are ya?" Jack slid his hat down low, jaw set like stone. "I didn't plan on this one either, but sometimes the fight finds you." Who do you side with, Jack, the wronged hero, or Lisa, whose greed backfired? Comment below and let the world know. If you support Jack's revenge, like and subscribe. If you despise Lisa's betrayal, share this video with your friends.